Hi, Mike Brantley, auctioneer. Discussing today, can auctioneers misrepresent supply? Value is often determined by supply and demand. In other words, a buyer looks and says, how many of these items are available? What's the supply? Rightly so. If it's rare, maybe it's worth more. If there's a bunch of them, maybe it's not worth as much or less. And sellers look for demand. I want a lot of people attending my auction. That's more demand. And the buyers want a lot of selection, and they don't want buyers there. They want to limit demand and have a lot of supply. And a rule concerning supply and demand is obviously for those that are in the appraisal business or otherwise, or most auctioneers would be familiar that if you have a lot of supply and not much demand, prices fall. And when you have a lot of demand and not much supply, prices rise. So back to our question today, could an auctioneer misrepresent supply? In other words, suggest supply is low, therefore the buyers might think, well, those items are worth more. And I'll give you an example. Let's just say an auctioneer's got, I don't know, 25 lawn tractors to sell. So he has an auction and he's got 5 of them out there, and he keeps the other 20 behind the barn or hidden or covered up. And the bidders come, hey, got 5 lawn tractors here. I've been looking for a lawn tractor. And they sell for a certain price, and there's a given supply and demand that day, with the supply being 5 lawn tractors. Next day, an ad runs in the paper or an email goes out or the website's updated. Hey, we got 5 more lawn tractors. Guys about those lawn tractors are like, hey, wait a minute. I didn't know he had more lawn tractors. He only had 5 there Saturday. Looks like he's got 5 more. Well, they show up, and maybe they're a little bit disturbed with, well, now hold on. Had I known that you had 10 lawn tractors, I wouldn't have been in much for this one. I would have backed off a little bit. With more supply and the same demand, I would expect prices to be a little lower. The bidders and buyers wouldn't care for that. Nonetheless, that auction takes place. Those 5 lawn tractors sell. And once that auction's complete, ad appears the next day. Hey, I got 5 more. Well, those 10 buyers are like, what? Wait a minute. How many lawn tractors you got? We thought you only had 10. Or in fact, some people thought the auctioneer only had 5. Is the auctioneer misrepresenting supply? I would argue not. Unless, if that very first auction, the auctioneer says, hey, I've only got these 5 lawn tractors, when there's 20 other ones sitting behind the barn or covered up and not disclosed to these bidders. If the auctioneer says, I only got these 5, I don't have any others. I guess if I say I only have these 5, I'm suggesting I don't have any others. And then I have others. I mean, simply put, that's a lie. That's intentional misrepresentation. I've only got these 5 lawn tractors, when in fact I have other lawn tractors just 50 feet away from you that I'm going to put in an auction next week. I already know I'm going to put in the auction next week, but I don't want you to know about them, because if you know about them, you'll perceive more supply and not bid as much. You might not bid as much on this lawn tractor thinking, well, I'll get one cheaper next time. However, if auctioneers don't represent or say that there's any certain supply of what they're selling, if I say, got these 5 lawn tractors here and we're going to start the auction, I've got 5 lawn tractors. For that matter, I could have somebody impressed with the price of lawn tractors at my auction and say, hey, I've got 5 over my place. Can I bring them over next week? I didn't know I had them. But here's the important thing. I didn't say these were the only 5 I had. I said these are the 5 I have. I didn't confirm or deny that I had any more, or on the chance that somebody else brings me some other lawn tractors. I didn't represent any supply other than that I'm currently offering these 5. So it seems that simple. I don't think any auctioneer is committing any foul or crime or misrepresenting if they don't represent. that the current inventory is all they have, unless they have other inventory and they don't want you to know about it. But here's a potential long-term effect, it seems to me. Auctioneer sells 5 lawn tractors. I've got 20 more behind the barn or covered up. And the next day I advertise 5 more. And the bidders are like, oh, he always does that. He says he's only got 5, but he's always got more. And then there's 5 more, and there's 5 more, etc. And the spring becomes summer, becomes fall, and I have another auction, and I'm selling hand tools. And so I schedule an auction, and I've got maybe 500 lawn tools, shop tools related, and I'm going to put 100 of them out. What are my bidders going to think? What are those same bidders going to think? Yeah, he's playing that bait and switch thing. He's saying he's only got 100, but he's got others. And they might bid less on those tools than they would otherwise, because I have taught them a lesson. When I only put out so many, I've got more. But I don't want you to know that. I don't want you to think that. Well, what have you learned by attending my other auctions? That I have inventory back, that I'm holding back to affect perception of supply. If I, on the contrary, put all 500 tools out there, you might think, bidders might think, I've got 5,000 tools behind the barn, covered up, hidden, and bid less on those current tools. So I think auctioneers could create a perception that there's always more coming next week, or there's always more coming online. This would be maybe online. I only list 100 tools, and then 3 days later I list another 100, and then 3 days later I list another 100, and people have already bid on the first 100 or the second 100, and they're like, well, wait a minute, had I known, well, I didn't say that the first 100 were the only 100. I was getting the other ones listed. I don't think there's any case there, except if an auctioneer says, these are the 100 tools, and these are the only 100 tools I've got. If they represent the supply, expressly represent the supply, and that's not true, that's a problem. Otherwise, I don't think it's a problem at all. And I think it's a technique that auctioneers can use, nonetheless, carefully, not to injure future sellers or future auctions with, hey, there must be more because he always has more when I don't have more. So I think you got to be careful. Mike Brantley, Auctioneer, pleasure to be with you today. Other videos on this same page, others forthcoming. Have a great day and stay safe.